Welcome to this presentation. My name is Mark Scythian. The date today is February 7th, 2025. The title of this presentation is Warping the Time-Space Continuum. So 3 concepts will be introduced in this presentation, focusing on the practical applications of warping the time-space continuum. So we do know that the protons of oxygen gas, one proton, can be quantum superpositioned into the past or onto alternate timelines, i.e. time dilation or contraction, and an energy input of 40 times 10 to the 15 power joules. So doing so would require so much energy with respect to a physical intact object that the global power grid would collapse. So we're talking about energy levels much greater than all the nuclear electric power plants on Earth. So the knowing if time dilation is happening on an artificial level is probably no, because we would experience all sorts of power outages and electromagnetic pulses in the process. So that rules out any type of secret, clandestine, so-called time travel experiments. But however, we do know it is feasible to warp the time-space continuum at a certain energy level. We do know that is a fact across high energy physics. So the next point, concept 2, is the introduction of naturally existing time vortexes and or wormholes. So the time vortex displaces time, whereas the wormhole can displace position and or time. So we'll just say the wormhole is position, instantaneous position or location displacement, i.e. teleportation, and the vortex is just time displacement forward or backward. So these are theoretically possible across the Heisenberg and Schrodinger's equations with respect to, again, high energy physics. So the next question is, are there naturally existing energy sources to support quantum superposition in the physical or the solid state? And so one point of interest is Earth's moment of inertia with respect to the rotational kinetic energy of Earth. So we can look up the Earth's moment of inertia value from qualifying sites such as NASA or privately owned space agencies or private sector space corporations. And it all comes to 8.04 times 10 to the 37th power kilogram meters squared is the Earth's moment of inertia, because the Earth is neither a solid or hollow sphere, but somewhere in between there. So the dynamics of Earth's moment of inertia are mapped out as such. And then Earth's mass, 5.9722 times 10 to the 24th power kilograms. So the equation for rotational kinetic energy measured in joules is 1/2 times moment of inertia based on the shape of the rotating object. In this case, it's a semi or partially hollow, partially solid sphere, then multiplied times the angular velocity omega squared. So Earth's equatorial angular velocity is 7.292 times 10 to the negative 5th power radians per second. And then we have the Earth's rotational kinetic energy measured in joules. So we make that calculation. And we calculate a kinetic energy value of 2.14 times 10 to the 29th power joules. So this means the Earth's rotational kinetic energy is sufficient to provide 5.35 trillion, or 10 to the 12th power, times the energy needed to support the warping of time-space. So we could classify that under quantum superpositioning, and in this case from the actual experimental work on time displacement of protons of oxygen. So this is kind of what's going on at many of the high energy physics labs, and especially at CERN. So probably, or probable, locations of electromagnetic grounds for whatever's left from the rotational kinetic energy other than what supports electrostatic fields, which ground into the poles of the Earth, then into the core of the Earth to maintain the molten state of the Earth's core so that a strong magnetic field can envelop around the Earth about 8 times its diameter. So we need that Earth's rotation to support the molten cores, iron molten cores, magnetic propagation around the Earth. And so probably these points are located at various electromagnetic grounding points on the Earth, and most likely the magnetic North Pole, the magnetic South Pole, and perhaps even the Bermuda Triangle as an offset or an offshoot, randomized non-polar grounding point. So that could explain the phenomena that has occurred several times over of aircraft simply just disappearing off radar, never to be found again. And I guess on the science fiction level, that would be a time displacement portal. But again, everything that does happen is a respect to energy transfer. Everything's about energy. Even matter itself is entangled energy. So there is a supposition that perhaps the Bermuda Triangle is on one of the geomagnetic ley lines of the poles, and it happened to randomly or intermittently displace, contract, or dilate time, which is a hypothesis at best. But we do know if we exceed the 40 times 10 to the 15 power joules that we're going to start warping the time-space continuum, because we do see this with proton or positronic emissions of oxygen with respect to the proton. So if we found the building blocks of a proton, that's the hadron. So we know possibly this is the type of experiments also going on at CERN. So point two's main takeaway is just tapping into the energy of naturally existing high power sources, such as perhaps the rotational kinetic energy of Earth and its relationship to the electrostatic and magnetic fields. So then we move on to the third concept, and this is with respect to spacecraft. And let's say we have a spacecraft, we shoot out of Earth's gravity at 25,000 miles per hour. We'll call that point A. And then we accelerate the spacecraft over a 6-year time period to 0.95 the speed of light. So what happens to a solid object when we move it to the speed of light? It no longer is a solid object, but it becomes light, equal to the resonant frequency of the physical matter. So that is the relationship between energy and matter. E is equal to mc squared. So we get to this 0.95 the speed of light, phase B, point B. Then we turn the ship around after slowing it down. So we have to spend 6 years to speed it up to 0.95 the speed of light. And then we spend 6 years slowing it down. And then we go to phase C, and we speed the spaceship back up to the 0.95 the speed of light. Then we slow it back down to what it was in speed at point A. So when we return back to Earth, if let's say we left in 2025, the Earth would now be 1,000 years in the future due to the time dilation that occurred across points A, B, C, D, and then finally E. So this is a function of the Lorentz factor, and we can measure the time dilation at or near the speed of light with respect to the reference point, or the point below the near speed of light function. So when you come back after spending 24 biological human years in that ship, when you return back to Earth, 1,000 years of Earth's time would pass. So that's a function of the Lorentz factor. And when we substitute the data into that equation, this becomes 0.31 Earth's time space with respect to radius and mass of the Earth. And so we have then the next question: what kind of propulsion system is going to actually make this work? So we would use a reflective laser that emits with a supplemental structure holding a monoatomic gold reflective mirror. And this would then split the laser into a concentrated focal point. So we know the E is equal to mc squared equation will result in exactly 1/2 the laser's wattage will convert into heat. So that would be watts kinetic energy in heat, 1/2 of the laser's original power. So if you had a 10,000 watt laser, this would result in 5,000 watts of heat. So that heat can be used through the superfluid medium of outer space as a slowly accelerating propulsion device, i.e. a positronic reflective laser. And over the course of 6 years, the ship would then accelerate to 0.95 the speed of light at very minimal power requirement. So you could use a solar panel accompanied with a small nuclear reactor. It would be extremely lightweight with a high energy density. And so then the payload requirement to escape Earth's gravitational field would be minimal at cost-effective design parameters, right? So now we have feasibility. So then we have our slow acceleration through the superfluid medium of outer space. Other than some slight solar winds, we would have a relatively inertial velocity with a slight increase of acceleration. So it would be a slow acceleration over a 6-year time period. That is 6 human Earth years, thus reaching 0.95 the speed of light by phase B, and then spending another 6 years to slow it down. So we're at the end of point B, and then we turn the ship around, speed it back up to 0.95 the speed of light for 6 years, and then slow it down back to its original start speed at A over another 6 years. So when the occupants of the ship return, the Earth will be 1,000 years into the future because of the time dilation with respect to the Lorentz factor. So we have then 3 tangible methods of warping the time-space continuum. And it might be very true that the poles of the Earth are heavily guarded by all of the international militaries because of the extremely high electromagnetic ground points of the Earth's lines of magnetic flux. And so that's more than likely a function of the Earth's rotational kinetic energy minus the grounding and efficiency losses, then manifesting a warping of time-space. And it's probably very guarded because, let's just say, private interests go up to the poles and discover this. Then we have a big problem with a deregulation and possible time management or time displacement management. We wouldn't say time management, but so obviously any rank and file civilian physicist or engineer could do the analysis with respect to high energy physics, or the solid state physics for that case, and use the entire Earth as a transduction device, and then quantify this massive amount of rotational kinetic energy, and much of which is grounding into electromagnetic fields and or electromagnetic pulses, but into the center of the Earth to maintain the high temperature molten core to then broadcast a magnetic field. Ultimately, all of this is powered by the sun. Indirectly, the neutrinos turning into photons, and then substituting that residual magnetism and rotational kinetics to then keep a feedback loop and rotational constant. But if we tapped into the Earth's rotational kinetic energy and we convert that energy into all sorts of different magnetodynamics, there's about 5.33 trillion times more energy from the Earth's rotational kinetic energy to support quantum superposition on a physical sense, or i.e. the warping of time-space. So Einstein-Rosen bridge had covered the wormholes, and the vortexes are something like the sci-fi movies where they're flying through the Bermuda Triangle and they do not change their position, but they change their time. And if that is true, if that's actually true, it's going to require a lot of energy, and I highly doubt it is human created or artificially created energy source. But I think it's, if that's true, it's a function of the massive rotational kinetic energy of the Earth. So these are three tangible or feasible models for warping the time-space continuum. And number three is something that NASA and private sector space corporations have actually successfully modeled and proven. And so then it's the propulsion system, the positronic reflective laser, that can actually make it work. And that's not to say it's already been done. It's just been kept secret. But this would be the physics describing the time dilation for practicality in controlled warping the time-space continuum. So thank you for watching this presentation, and have a great day.